Inequalities. Here is an example of an equation. Equations have equal signs. Inequalities have greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to signs. These four signs. You work equations and inequalities the same way when you're solving them. Inequalities are solved and graphed. Equations are solved and checked. So let's work this one, just like it's an equal sign. Just pretend there's an equal sign. So to solve it, plus 5, plus 5. So x is greater than 3. To graph it, make sure your line has arrows. Make sure you put 3 in the middle and the numbers that go next to 3 beside it. You only need 3 numbers. Then, if you have a plain sign, like one of these, you have an empty circle. If you have a fancy sign, one of those, you have a filled-in circle. So we have a plain sign, so we have an empty circle at 3. And we look here and we say, oh, it's going this direction. You color all of this in. It's on top of the line. Make sure it touches the circle. Get it all nice and beautiful and colored in. And now you have graphed it. You have to have this answer and the graph. Sometimes they change them around and sort of write them down backwards. So you can turn it around at the beginning, or you can wait and turn it around at the end when you get your answer. But the important thing is, this needs to stay pointing to the x minus 2 side, or the x side, after I move the 2. So, to work this one, I'm going to go plus 2, plus 2. So 9 is greater than or equal to x. Now that's a beautiful answer, and there's nothing wrong with it, except if you graph it and you don't flip it around, you're probably going to miss the graph and color the wrong side, because you're going to be looking this way, when in reality the graph's going to go the other way. So go ahead and turn it around. X here, 9 here, and make sure this is still pointing to the x when you turn it around. So we need 9 on our graph, and 8 and 10. And then we need a filled-in circle, because that's a fancy sign, remember? Fancy sign, filled-in circle. And then we need to go this way. See how you would have missed it if you had left it here? If you had left it like this, you most likely would have colored this side of the graph. So make sure your x is first when you're trying to graph it. Okay, try this one. Then turn the video back on and see if you did it right. Here's the answer. Remember, you have to have this answer and this graph. Some people miss this answer because they put an equal sign instead of this sign. It has to have this sign. Here's the first part of video homework. Solve them and graph them. Now, there's also problems where you have a number with the x. You already know how to solve those. If that was an equation, most of you are already going, oh, it's 3, which is right. I've written down 2 problems with one difference. What do you see that's different about these 2 problems? Yes, the negative. This one has a negative because something happens when there's a negative with the x. So let's go back over that, but first let's work this problem so we can remember how to do it. Divide by 3, divide by 3, x is greater than 3. When you graph it, you have 3 and 4 and 2, and it's an empty circle and it's headed this direction. Now, this thing we're fixing to talk about with the negative is the weird thing about graphing. It's the only weird thing, but you have to remember it. Whenever you have a negative with the x, written like the one you see right here, or you could have a negative with the x written like this. Well, not like that exactly, like a fraction and x over a negative. See how both of those, that's with the x and this is with the x? When there's a negative with the x, you know the sign is going to flip. The real rule is when you multiply or divide by a negative. Well, up here I'm getting ready to divide by a negative, and over here I'm going to have to multiply by a negative. So anytime you see a negative with the x this way or this way, the sign is going to flip. It has to be with the x. So let's work this one. We're going to divide by negative 3, divide by negative 3. My sign is going to flip. So x is less than 3. So when I graph this one, and here's 3, it's going to head this direction. See the difference between the one without the negative and the one with the negative? That's what's going to happen when there's a negative. Your sign is going to flip. Okay, look at these 6 problems. Which ones of those that you see there are going to have a sign flip? Where do you see a negative with the x? There are 3 problems that have a sign flip. Did you find them? This one, this one, this one. The others don't have a negative with the x. This has a negative with the x. This has a negative with the x. This has a negative with the x. So your sign is going to flip. Okay, let's try this problem. My brain is already saying it's going to have a sign flip because I see a negative 2 with the x. So I'm just going to work it like it's an equation. So minus 7, minus 7. That's going to leave me negative 2x greater than or equal to negative 10. Then I'm going to divide by negative 2. And x, my sign's going to flip, is less than or equal to 5. I just divided by negative 2, my sign flips. Then when I graph it, of course, 5 will be in the middle, 6, 4 will be here. It'll be a filled-in circle headed this direction. Make sense? Here's the rest of your video homework. Have a lovely evening.